Well, Michelle, this is being recorded, as said, and then it's kept on the Kimberly Public Library Facebook page.
Wonderful.
So you are archived forever.
Maybe not forever, but
Okay, I should have done
A
something
long
with my
time.
hair. Oh my.
oh, here they are. I welcome everyone that's logging in right now. We'll get started in a few minutes. We're gonna let people get settled in. Master Gardeners, our first one in April. We have 2 in April.
Oh. Can you hear the puppy crying?
I
I'm
cannot hear
hoping-
the puppy crying.
Okay, good. I can hear him crying, but I just wanted to make sure you guys couldn't hear him.
Is he sad because you're in another room?
Yeah, I'm upstairs. I've gone upstairs and I've got the staircase blocked off, but he's just sitting at the bottom of the stairs crying. And he can do that for a long time.
Aw. For those of you logging in, this is a webinar format, so you're not going to be able to see yourself, but you should be able to see me probably right now, and the screen will be on peonies. We're going to be talking about peonies, which I'm super excited about. If you have any technical problems, there's a chat feature that is the best way to get a hold of me and let me know what your problem is, and I can help you solve that. There's also a Q&A box on the bottom of your screen as well. You can put your questions in at any time and we'll take them at the end. So we'll give a couple more minutes for people to get settled in, and then we'll get going on this beautiful night.
Before we get started here, a couple things about Outagamie Master Gardeners. If you are interested in becoming a Master Gardener, you can contact us. And the best way to do that is through our website, which is ocmga.net. And if you didn't catch that, just Google Outagamie Master Gardeners and you will get there. Also in there is a link to Gardener SOS, which is a helpline. So if you have any miscellaneous gardening questions, you can send a message there and we'll get back to you, hopefully with the correct answer.
Always good to get some gardening help. All right, they're slowing down. I'm gonna get us started. Welcome everyone to Master Gardeners Presents. We're talking about peonies today. I am here with Tom Wenzel, who is the brain behind all of this and brings us all these amazing things every single month to this month. And I'm here with Michelle Ovans from Ovans Peony Farm in Beaver Dam, I believe.
Yes. And Beaver Dam.
All right, and we're going to be talking about peonies today. So again, if you have any questions, you can put them in the Q&A box below or in the chat if you need having some technical problems or something. And Michelle, I'm going to let you take it away. And
Wonderful. Thank you. I'm so happy to be here with everybody tonight. The weather is just beautiful, and everybody, I'm sure some of you have got peonies that are popping up. So it's an exciting time. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about cut flower production with the peonies and how I got started. My husband and I both are retired from the US Navy after 20 years, and he's from Janesville. So we moved back to Wisconsin, and I had never seen a peony in person until we moved back here. I decided I was going to grow something and take it to the farmer's market. And that was going to be my way of becoming part of the community. My father had also been in the Navy, so my entire life has been spent moving around, and I had never been anywhere, lived anywhere longer than 5 years. So when I put the peonies in, not only did they set down roots, but I also did too. And so I consider Wisconsin my home now. So it all started as a dream. And when I first decided to grow peonies is when that's when I learned that about 80% of the flowers that we get from the wholesale florist or at the grocery store come from South America. Only 20% are grown in the United States. And so we have what we call a slow, I remember you've heard about slow food, eating close to where the food's being grown, right? Well, there's a slow flower movement that's happening across the United States. And I'm sure that a lot of you are familiar with, back in the 80s, there was a slogan, say no to drugs. The Say No to Drugs campaign virtually put US growers out of business. And that's because the South America was giving special incentives to grow flowers other than growing poppies for drugs or marijuana. And so the US growers couldn't keep up with it. So that's how the US growers went out of business. But over the last 10 years, we're seeing a big movement happening across the United States, and we're referring to it as the field to vase movement. You've probably noticed that a lot of the local florists have gone out of business, and that's because they can't compete with the flowers that are being flown in from out of the country, and the prices are so exorbitant that they can't keep their doors open. So what we're seeing is people, many growers that specialize in cut flowers, like I'm specializing in peonies, and we call ourselves farmer florist, where we're growing the flowers and also doing floral design work. So it's a whole new thing that we're seeing across the United States. There's a couple things that had happened the last couple years with COVID, where it was very detrimental to many businesses, but on the floral industry for the US growers, it was the best 3 years that they've had. And that's because the flowers, the airlines were no longer working, and that's where the flowers come in. They're flown in the bellies of the airplanes. They land in Florida. They're fumigated and inspected and then go out to all the wholesale florists. And all of that shut down. So it forced people to recognize the US growers again. And so we've seen a big insurgence of the floral industry. So it's actually really good for the US in that regard. This is the new farm here. These are the peonies in their first season. And you can see that I grow them in landscape fabric, and I burn the holes. We have a 5-gallon, we started out using a 5-gallon bucket and then burn around it, but my husband's done a template now. And so that he just lays the template and we burn like 3 holes on each side, flip the template over, and then everything is nice and even. The peonies are grown on a 3-foot on center. And then when they are fully mature, they're touching each other. This is the first season. This is what you can expect from peonies the first year that they're planted. You can see that just this section has a couple peonies in it. The rest don't have any. That's because I just bud all of the peonies the first year. I usually leave a couple peonies in each section of cultivar so that I can identify that I did indeed receive the peonies that I had placed on order. The reason that we do that is that by cutting those peony blooms off their first year, that encourages root growth, and you get a nice healthy root system going on the plant before it's trying to reproduce. Some growers will even disbud their plants for the first 2 or 3 years. I don't do that. Peonies, we don't harvest on them until they're 4 years old, will be the first year of harvest. So this is what that same row of peonies looks like this last spring. You can see all the buds there, and the rows are solid, and you can barely even see the landscape fabric. So it doesn't take away from the beauty. We have set everything up here at this farm so that not only can we harvest and sell the blooms to florists, event planners, peony lovers, of course, and do-it-yourself brides, but also so that it's beautiful for people to come and visit and walk up and down the aisles. These peonies, still early in the season, so they still haven't completely flushed out here. They're still a little bit. And then again, here's the same row with the peonies open and beautiful. We can get about 6 weeks of bloom from peonies, and that's through different types of peonies. There are woodland peonies, and they look very similar to Trillium. So I don't have any of those. It used to be that when you purchased a peony from a peony grower, it would tell you that they would bloom in weeks, usually 4, 5, or 6. Or they'd say early, mid, or late. Now then, it's the industry is being changed, and you're starting to see that it'll tell you blooms, bloom week 2 through 6. Most herbaceous peonies, and those are the ones that die to the ground every year, what we're used to seeing are that 4 and 5 week. This is a photograph here that you're seeing of our display gardens. In our display gardens, we have many different types of peonies. We have the herbaceous peonies. We have hybrid peonies. We have tree peonies, or you can, they really should be referred to as a woody. Here in Wisconsin, they get about 4 to 5 feet tall. They do have woody stems, so the rabbits do like them. So if you do have the tree peonies, it's best if they're caged. And then there's also intersectionals, or some people refer to them as Itos. That's the name of the Japanese man that first crossed a tree peony with a herbaceous. So if you were to ask me today what kind of peony I would recommend for gardens, I would tell you intersectionals. And that's because intersectionals, this is a hybrid here. Intersectionals are, again, a cross between a woody peony and a herbaceous. So in the herbaceous peonies, we usually just see the 3 colors. We see white, red, and pink. Whereas in the tree peonies, they have multicolored petals. They come in a wide variety of colors. And the leaves on those tree peonies also have wonderful fall colors, like you might see in a maple. So what an intersectional does is it dies to the ground like your old-time peony that you're used to seeing, but it has the foliage and the blooms of a tree peony. The other unique aspect of a intersectional is that all the primary blooms will bloom at one time, and then the secondary blooms will bloom, and then the tertiary, and so on. So you get a long extended bloom cycle from an intersectional. They are more expensive, but worth every penny. So this is, again, the rows of peonies. They're just starting. You can see they're just shooting up there. The buds don't have any color on them yet. And then this is the same view with all of them in full bloom. I only use the herbaceous for cut flowers. You can use intersectionals for that, but those plants are very expensive. And, I just enjoy them in the display gardens. This one right here, this peony that you're seeing, do you see how thick that stem is on there? If I was to hold my hand up next to it when I took this picture, that stem is probably as big around as my thumb. It's a herbaceous hybrid. The hybrids are the first things to bloom is the tree peonies. And then we go into hybrids. And these hybrids, as you can see here, there are no side buds on it, and it has a super strong stem on it. So the hybrids don't typically need to be caged. A lot of you are used to seeing the peonies that were in your mom's and grandmother's gardens. And when the rain would come, it would knock them down. A lot of them were bred in France or in China, and it was more about the fragrance of the bloom and the bloom structure itself, but not particularly what they look like in the garden. So in today, the hybridizers are looking at things as far as the structure of the plant and how well they present in the garden. And none of us really want the extra added work of having to cage everything. And that's where these hybrids are so fabulous, because they have these huge stems on them and the rain doesn't take them down as readily as we see the other types of plants. Let's see, this slide here is about the CoolBot. I don't really know if you guys need to know about this, but it's up here anyways. I use a CoolBot in my walk-in cooler instead of a compressor. The cooler is kept at 34 degrees. And by keeping it at 34 degrees, when I harvest my peonies, I can store them in the walk-in cooler for 3 months. That always just amazes everybody. You don't think about how cut flowers are shipped around the world and everything, and you know, we know that when we go buy vegetables that sometimes they're green, and that's because they've been harvested in a green stage because they're continuing to ripen and they ship them. Well, it's the same thing for the different flowers. The flowers are cut at a certain stage and then they're kept in cold storage, and that's how they're able to ship them around the world. I never keep mine for 3 months. Usually a month is all that mine are stored for because they sell so quickly. But just as a side note, you know, we know that in Alaska, oil is their #1 thing that they do there, right? To generate funds for the state. Well, cut flower peonies has become a second commodity for Alaska because of all the different elevations in Alaska. The peonies, a lot of their peonies don't start blooming until the beginning of July. So that means that they have peonies in cold storage through September, and nowhere else in the world are they blooming or can you get peonies at that time. So it has become a second industry in Alaska, and they are actively seeking peony growers if any of you are interested in moving to Alaska. So this, oops, here we go. This peony, you can see that they've got color on them. They're pretty close to being ready for me to harvest. The other thing that I have this picture here for is to show you all these side buds. All of these side buds are normally removed. Every single plant we go through and we remove those side buds when they're just little tiny. For them to be floral grade, they can't have any side buds on them. And the purpose of that, you can see on this picture here where there are no side buds. Up here in the upper left, looks like we missed one, but all the side buds have been removed. We go through on every single plant, every bud, and remove all of them. I think last year my husband counted, he's a counting guy, and On one plant, I think he said he removed 42 side buds. So you times that times 1,500, that's we have 1,500 plants. That's a lot of removal of buds and a lot of care that's taken for the peonies to become to be floral grade. By removing those side buds when they're little tiny, what that does is it puts all of the energy of the plant into the formation of one beautiful bloom. You can see the bloom right here in the middle of the screen where the petals are just starting to crack open. That's when I would harvest. We referred to that as marshmallow stage. If you pushed on top of the bloom, it would feel like a marshmallow. It would be nice and soft. And then that's when we would harvest and put it in the cooler. This is a picture of the cooler, and I have all different kinds of peonies. These are all in buckets. So that means that these peonies are planning on being used within 1 week. They're only stored in water if they're going to be used 1 week or sooner. Anything beyond a week, we would have them laying on the shelves dry, and that's how they would be stored for the rest of the 3 months in storage. You would be able to do this yourself in your refrigerator. What you would do is harvest in the bud stage, like I said, strip the leaves off of the peony buds, wrap the buds in a paper towel because that's going to keep the moisture off the paper, off the bud. Then you're going to stick the bud section into a Ziploc plastic bag with the stem sticking out, and then lay it down in your refrigerator. Your refrigerator is about 42 degrees, and they are also frost free. So if you didn't have them in the plastic bag, the refrigerator would desiccate the petals. It would dehydrate them because they're frost free. And so what you're doing with that plastic bag is you're protecting the petals from being dehydrated. You could probably, and the longer you store them at the higher temperature, the shorter the vase life. So with your refrigerator at home, you would probably be able to store them maybe a month. When you take them out of the refrigerator, the petals are all going to be droopy. They're going to look like they're dead, and you're going to think I lied to you, but I didn't. Just go ahead and cut the stem, put them in room temperature water, and they'll go ahead and open up for you just as if you had just harvested them. And that way you'll be able to use them for that special occasion, that birthday or wedding anniversary or something. When we harvest our peonies, we never, the first 2 years, so let's back up here a second. So peonies, we don't harvest. The first year of harvest would be year 4. So year 4, you would only harvest 1/3. Year 5, you would only harvest 1/3. And then year 6, you could harvest 50% and 50% from then on. The reason why is because you need your stem length, and florists are looking for 16, 18-inch stems. And so you're taking a couple brackets of leaves off whenever you're cutting a stem with a bud on it. So you're reducing the amount of leaf coverage that's on the peony, and it's not able to photosynthesize and store energy in the root system for next year's growth. A peony is not considered mature until year 7. So you want to leave enough leaf structure on there so that your plant is continuing to grow and be healthy. There are a lot of new growers out there, and especially a lot of people have seen what I've done with peonies, and there is a huge resurgence of peony cut flower growers that we're seeing, especially the last 2 years. And they're not waiting for the peonies to mature, and which it's really sad because it's limiting the life of a peony. Peonies can actually live longer than you and I. There are known cases of peonies to live for 200 years. So if you allow your peonies to grow, and when you plant a peony, if you're planting it for a lifetime, you're going to have a good, healthy peony, ensuring that it's got good drainage, and that the soil is well amended, and away from other tree roots. You'll be a happy peony owner. So, oh, look at that. This is a frost. I get a lot of calls about a freeze. I started my farm in Merrill, Wisconsin in 2009. We are in Beaver Dam now. We sold that farm so that we could move and be closer to take care of my in-laws. My father-in-law just turned 100 and my mother-in-law is 96, and they're still at home. But this picture here is an unexpected freeze that we had. And I was just devastated when I saw what happened. This plant, my whole field was like this plant. And I was terrified that I lost my entire crop, not just the blooms, but also the plants. This plant was crispy. I contacted my friend in Minnesota, Harvey Boucher, who has been growing. He owns, he sold it this year and retired to Austria. But he has spent his entire adult life growing and hybridizing peonies. So I called Harvey all in tears and said, Harvey, they're frozen. And he's like, don't worry, Michelle, by 3 o'clock, they'll be standing up. And I thought it was absolutely crazy. And I called home and I told my husband, I said, get the camera out and take pictures. And sure enough, I did lose the buds. That was to be expected. But this is what that same plant looked like at 3 o'clock that afternoon. Peonies can take up to 27 degrees, up to 4 days before it actually hurts the plant. What the big difference is that when the plant is frozen like that, if it's an overcast day and the plant is able to unfreeze slowly, then it doesn't do the damage. But when we have a hard freeze and then it goes directly into a super hot day with, direct sun, that's where the damage happens, because the frozen cell explodes, it ruptures. Whereas if it was just a nice cool day and overcast, then it just slowly defrosts. And you can still see that there are buds on this plant, but the buds themselves were damaged. And a lot of times you won't know there's damage on them until they bloom. And when they do bloom, maybe only half the bloom is there. It'll lose half the section. So this is what we do now when we're going to have a freeze. And it's usually just that one day, at the very end of the frost season that, we would get these up north, but I haven't experienced this down here. But these are hoops that we've bent. And this is a frost blanket that you can get from Johnny's. That's where we got ours from. And the hoops and the frost blankets themselves are not touching the plants. If they're touching the plant, the freeze or the frost will still go through it and your blooms will be bent, and it'll still damage the blooms. So some people put like a plastic bucket over their plant, and I don't advise that. Actually, the frost and the will go right through the bucket and it'll still hold the cold inside. These frost blankets are fabulous. It does let the air through, it lets rain through, and it also lets the heat through. So, but main thing that it's doing is capturing the heat out of the soil and keeping them above freezing or frost so they don't damage the blooms. And that's more pictures of peonies, because we're talking about peonies, you got to see peonies, right? I believe that this is Raspberry Sunday, the bright pink, the light pink. Over here on the left, the bright pink one, Princess Margaret. That's Princess Margaret. She was named with the permission of the Queen Mother. And then we've got, let's see, that looks like Do Tell there in the front here. And that's here at this new farm. This year, these are one of my favorite peonies right here that you can see. This is Angel Cheeks. So peonies are a high-end wedding flower. Pinterest has an explosion of peonies on there. And what we're seeing is that most of the florists are selling peonies about $17 per stem. And a lot of what I have discovered is a lot of florists have never even worked with peonies because they are expensive, and what bride is going to pay for an entire bouquet full of $17 stem peonies or their entire wedding? But things are changing. Here at the farm, I sell them for $4 a stem. And these are all our flowers. Some of our design work. I have stopped doing the design work because with the Wisconsin Arts and Peony Festival, I can't do it all anymore. So this year will be the last year. I have a large wedding I'm doing this year, and then we'll be done. But these are just eye candy for you. These are all flowers that we've grown here at the farm. Brides have come from all over Wisconsin and Minnesota to get their peonies. A lot of them will come and purchase their peonies and then take them to their own designers. Because we sell them for $4 a stem, it's still affordable for a bride to have a full wedding in peonies and be able to afford for the designer to design them for them. And then we also have the designers that come and get them from us. So these are all our peonies. These are all our brides. And see here, different styles. This was one of the first weddings. This was a wedding that was in August, and it was in Minnesota, and they had 1,000 peonies at their wedding. It was my first big wedding, and it was in magazines. So I'm very proud to say that. It was an absolutely stunning wedding. This is McKenna. She's one of my helpers. She comes and she helps me do everything. So we played in the peonies one day, and that's her beautiful headdress. This is Megan. And this is a coral. This is Coral Charm. We saw that corals were very popular. Corals are one of the first peonies that will bloom in your garden. If you do plant a coral, it is a hybrid. So again, it'll be one of the first to bloom. The cool thing about coral peonies is that they have what we call adventitious root system. Most peonies have to have a piece of the crown on the root when you plant it, or it won't grow anything. Whereas a coral, say you're planting it and a piece of the root with no crown is attached, it will grow a peony. So go ahead and plant that piece of root that broke off, and you'll have a second plant. The corals are rather tall and leggy. So if I was planting a coral, I would plant it in the middle of the beds and not right up close because it's got the bare legs on it. But they are quite stunning. The corals are quite stunning. We have do-it-yourself brides. They come and I show them how to make a bridal bouquet, and they do it all themselves. I've had entire families from the grandmothers on both sides on the wedding party all the way down to come and make their own wedding designs. And it's just a very nice way for brides to be able to have a complete wedding with peonies, with them being affordable. So when I planted them, everybody said, plant them and people will come. Our first farm was in Merrill, about midway between Medford and Wausau, and on a dirt dead-end road. And they found me anyways, even before I started advertising. We get lots of groups. Master gardeners come. The master gardeners in Wausau would come and have their meetings at the farm, Red Hat Society, local church groups, and people just driving by. there's nothing like peonies, people coming to see the peonies, and they start telling you about the family memories, and it's just such a special thing. This is here, the farm here, some of the red ones. We have started what we Wisconsin Arts and Peony Festival. When I joined the Chamber of Commerce the year before my grand opening, and I told them what I was doing and how I opened the farm up to the public to come and see the blooms. You know, when I harvest a third of the plant, and you saw how many blooms are still on those plants after I've got done harvesting, it's just a shame not to share. You cannot not do this and not share the peonies with everybody. So the mayor asked me if we would do this Arts and Peony Festival, and this is our third year. Our first year we had over 1,200 people on the day of the festival. We've changed it now. I don't just have the farm open on one day. The farm is open for a week to allow people to come and walk around and enjoy themselves and not be masses of people. We have over 1,500 plants with, I've lost count, but I think around 90 different varieties. So you can see the different types, the structure, and see all the different blooms that we have. There are also vendors. The farm will be open from June 5th to the 13th. You can go to visit beaverdam.com. It lists all of the activities that are happening here at the farm, but also downtown. The exciting part of the downtown, if any of you are quilters, the Great Wisconsin Quilt Show is downtown. This year, the quilt show is 100 years of Art Deco. It's wonderful. They also do a bed turning where they have all the different types of quilts on the beds, and then they turn the quilts, describing them as they go along. So it's really a wonderful, fun event. We are also, this is our second year of doing the Picnic in the Peonies. It's a field to vase evening where we have award-winning grazing table. The Tricky Foods out of Madison is been awarded by Madison Magazine, and she'll be here for a grazing table. We'll have a husband and wife duo, Wise Jennings, that will be playing music, and then we have fudge from Valley Fudge and from Coon Valley. And then the latest is we're going to have herbal tea from Sacred Blooms Flower Farm. So I'm really excited about the activities, and everybody always enjoys it. We also do peony design classes. But the main thing is for you to come and see the peonies and enjoy all the different varieties. So many people don't realize that peonies were the very first flower ever to be talked about that we know of in recorded history. Peonies were talked about in Greek mythology. And so peonies have been around forever and have been hybridized forever. There's a legend out of China. China has only ever had one empress, and her name was Empress Wu. She started out as a concubine and ascended to the imperial throne. And it goes on to say that it was a gray and ugly day, and she went into the imperial gardens and she ordered everything in the imperial garden to bloom. She came back 2 weeks later and everything was blooming except for the peony. So the peonies were banished from the imperial gardens, and they sent them to a town called Luang, China. I think I'm saying that right, I'm not sure. But they sent all the peonies to Luang, China. Within a couple years, the peonies were flourishing and beautiful, and they actually moved the imperial city to Luang, China, which is the imperial city to this day. And that's because of the peonies. So, but these are some of the pictures from the floral design class. This young lady came with her mom, and we have places. This is a new trend. This doesn't have any peonies on it, but you're all flower lovers, so I thought you might enjoy this. There's a new trend that's happening, and it's a wearable art. And so what this is, I took a piece of vinyl, and then the flowers are attached to the vinyl, and then it's a necklace that you would wear with a nice stylish dress. The other thing that they're doing is athletic tape. So like if you ever had your shoulder taped or your knee taped by the doctor, there's this athletic tape, and you cut it, and then the flowers are attached to that tape, and then they go right on your skin, and you look like you have a floral tattoo. So we've between the last 2 years, we have planted over 200 peonies on our river walk downtown. The peonies that I selected, our farm and the Wisconsin Peony Society donated the money for these peonies for the downtown. And the beds that we planted downtown, there was 3 criteria that I utilized to make the selections for the peonies. They either needed to be awarded the gold medal winners from the American Peony Society, or they had to have been awarded Best in Landscape an award, or they were bred, they were hybridized here in Wisconsin. So with that criteria and what we have here in the gardens here, we're proud to announce that the American Peony Society is going to hold its convention in Beaver Dam in 2025. That's when the Riverwalk will be fully mature. So what will happen is people will come from all over the United States and other countries, and all their peonies will be on display, and they'll be graded and awarded best in show or what have you. But then it will be open to the public. It will be free to the public, and all of you can come and walk through and see all of these beautiful peonies in bloom. So I'm very, very excited about that. These 2 pictures here are of hybrids. So is this. This is Red Charm. Here is an intersectional. You can see on these blooms, these petals have multicolors on them, and you can see how nice and round this plant is. Beautiful, beautiful intersectional plants. This picture doesn't show the coloration so well, but this is Pastel Elegance. It's a hybrid that's come here out of Wisconsin, and it actually has salmon undertones. It's quite beautiful. So, and then this is Bartzilla, which is also a intersectional, and that's where we're going to get these yellows and lavenders and many different colors. This is one of my favorites. It's at the old farm. It's called Magenta Moon. And what I loved about this is that this is a semi-double bloom. And so when it would have, and you can see too that it has the real thick stems on it, but because it's a semi-double, when it would rain, it doesn't hold all that rain in the bloom. The rain will run through it, so it doesn't take it to the ground. So semi-doubles can be very, very nice addition to the plant. This is Clark. He's no longer with us, but he's smiling at everybody because he loved peonies too. Here's a tree peony. That's Cora Stubbs. Just a few pictures just for you to enjoy. This was just a rescue. There was an old farm that was all gone, and the peony was left, and I checked with its owners and it let me dig them up. Here's some corals. This is pink Hawaiian coral. Lady Alexander Duff is this light pink one here. Again, pink Hawaiian coral and lamb's ear. That's the inside of a tree peony. I'm hoping I'm giving you spring fever here. Don Richardson. This picture is very unique. You can see that these are edged in gold and it's absolutely gorgeous. It's a showstopper. Everybody goes right to these plants. Again, pink Hawaiian coral. Some of the red ones, magenta moon. I don't remember that name. That's all I have for you. This is what it looks like in the fall when we cut them down. We use a hedge trimmer and go through and just slice them all off, clean them all up. There's my son and a couple of friends that helped us clean up this last fall. Our fall cleanup is very important. There's very few diseases that peonies get, but fungal disease is one of them. So a good fall cleanup is vital in prevention of disease. The other big thing is making sure that peonies don't have wet feet. When they stand in water, that's when they're going to get the diseases. This picture here was a little experiment that was done by American Peony Society member. We always, peonies, it's best to plant peonies in the fall. Unlike annuals, like when you put an annual in the ground, it immediately starts putting feeder roots out, whereas peonies don't do that until the fall. So this is two identical plants. One was planted in the spring and one they held it in the pot. It was a potted plant that they purchased. We don't normally recommend potted plants. And this is why. You can see the one on the right that has the small root ball. That was planted in its permanent spot in the spring. And you can see it doesn't have much of a root ball at all. So it's living off of the energy in the root structure itself. Whereas the other one was put into, was left in its pot and put in a space that was semi-shaded, because it doesn't need all of the stress of the heat and everything, because it doesn't have the root structure. It went ahead and developed roots, and you can see just in the plant size, they both were 3 eyes. When you're buying a peony, you want 3 to 5 eyes for it to have a good plant the first year. When you go to these large, you know, Menards, Home Depot, Lowe's, all these, and you get these peonies in this little plastic bag, and they have like 1 eye on those. Those are where the cut flower farmers are regenerating their plants, and they dig them and they're dividing them all up, and they're just little tiny chunks off of their plants. They're spent there, and so it'll take at least 5 years for that plant to produce any type of flower for you. You're best to go to a grower that specializes in peonies, and then 3 to 5 eyes is what you're looking for. When you go to a grower that specializes in peonies, most often, of course, you're going to pay more. You're not going to get a peony for $5. An average peony, not a collector peony, you can get for $25 to $30. The intersectionals that I've been talking about, you will be able to get an intersectional $40 to $60. Of course, there are ones that are thousands of dollars, but for the everyday gardener, you can get a nice plant for that. You're going to plant those eyes 1.5 to 2 inches below the soil. If they're deeper than that, then you'll have beautiful leaf structure, and then the peony doesn't give you any blooms. And that's because it's planted too deep. So those are the main problems. And I hope I've inspired you to grow some peonies and to come to Beaver Dam and see what we have to show you. I'll take any questions now.
So we have quite a few questions. There's a couple that are on pests. My peony flowers get disseminated by some type of beetle as soon as they bloom. I live in the UP of Michigan. Is there anything I can do other than try to pick them off? And then someone else also asked about Japanese beetles.
Yeah, I'm surprised that the Japanese beetles are eating them. What we're seeing is that, especially if there are fields of soybeans around you, the Japanese beetles absolutely love the soybeans, and then they migrate over to you. Last year, actually, my field was completely covered in Japanese beetles, and they just stuck around for a day or so and left. I haven't found where the Japanese beetles have been eating my peonies. So I'm sorry to say that I can't help you on that one. But if, of course, we try to stay away from pesticides. And when it comes to Japanese beetle, I'm afraid that I would get my sprayer out and I would use a pesticide that's specific for Japanese beetles.
Well, another suggestion on the other ones that are decimating your plants, if you can get collect a couple of the beetles and bring them into your local egg
UW.
agent, they might be able to help you with that.
Yeah, peonies are pretty pest resistant. Sometimes we get thripes, and we'll usually, if somebody's having problems with thripes, it's usually on white ones, on their white peonies. But I really have never seen the Japanese beetles eating the peony. Not to say that that's not happening, but I haven't experienced that. I saw another one here. Let's see, how to prevent the powdery mildew. The powdery mildew is all about prevention. You saw where I cleaned up the fields really good. Powdery mildew is a fungal issue, and peonies are susceptible to fungal issues. Powdery mildew, again, that's because of the hot days, the high humidity, cooler nights. The only way to prevent powdery mildew is to spray a fungicide rated for powdery mildew. The good thing about this, though, is that the powdery mildew does not hurt the peonies. It does not look good, but it does not hurt them. So if you have not done a preventive, by it just turning gray, just do a very good fall cleanup, because that's most likely where the issue is coming forward, is that it's in the ground, it's on the dead leaves that are there. I use two different types of fungicide, and I do a soil drench in the spring when they're first starting to come up. When they're up about 3 or 4 inches, I do my first soil drench and covering because the fungus is in the soil. And as they come through, and the other thing that they get is botrytis, and botrytis will kill your peony that season if it's not treated. So especially if it's a wet spring. So I use a fungicide as it's rated up until I get ready to start harvesting. About a week before I start harvest, I stop spraying any fungicide according to the directions. Usually it's about once every 12 days that they're sprayed, and then I stop. And then I do not spray anymore for the rest of the season. And so if some of them do have powdery mildew, I just let it be, because I just don't want to spray any more fungicide than I absolutely need to. I don't use the same fungicide every year because they will become resistant. So I switch. You can use a copper sulfate. I use a fungicide called Medallion. And you can also use one that's called Chipco. And Chipco is used for golf courses. They use it for the grass. What people don't realize is that a lot of times when your plant gets the fungus on it, it's because of when you're mowing your lawn. If those grass clippings are sprayed and it hits the plants, you're spreading the fungus onto the plants from the grass. The grass normally has lots of different types of fungal diseases. You know how later in the year you can see like orange, like growing in the grass. It's fungus. So I always spray the grass around my peony beds so that I'm not transferring fungus from the grass to the peonies.
Okay.
Let's see, we've got one here. What is the most reliable place to purchase a peony plant for home landscaping? We have a number of peony growers here in Wisconsin. There is Oh My Peonies is one. There is Fina, F-I-N-A, in Wisconsin. Solaris Farms in Reedsburg is Nate Bremer, who is the president of the American Peony Society. There is Hidden Springs in Minnesota, who is fabulous, and also Swinson's. So I know I've named these off very quickly. And Hollingsworth Peonies out of Missouri. These are all where I purchase my own, but you can go to the American Peony Society website and they will have a list of all the different peony growers. Would I recommend the average peony grower to remove the side buds? I would not recommend it unless you are going to save your peony for the very special day. Not all the side buds will mature, but usually one or two of the side buds will mature, and that will extend your season on the herbaceous. So you might just, but if you're looking for a couple really big, beautiful, voluptuous peony buds, you know, remove a couple of the side buds. You don't have to remove all of them. Does it harm the plant by not harvesting? Not at all. Doesn't hurt your plant at all by not harvesting. What I would recommend though is to make sure that you are disbudding, disbud all of your deadheading, excuse me, deadhead, because if you don't deadhead, the seeds are maturing. So all the energy is going into the development of the seeds. And peonies really are a root crop. And you want all of the energy to go into the root structure so that you have beautiful plants, beautiful blooms next year. The other thing along with that is that once the peonies have quit blooming, people quit watering them. Peonies like about an inch of water a week. And when they are growing new eyes and storing energy in their root system is from July to September. So that is really one of the most important times to be ensuring that it's got adequate water. You don't want it standing water, you know, let them dry out in between. I would water them at least once every 2 weeks. And then that way you'll have more blooms the next year. Let's see. How long do you need to take them out of their fridge to have them open? They will start opening out of their fridge immediately. They will start opening. If you, and also again, it depends upon how long you've stored them. If you're at 42 degrees, you can store them for a month and they're going to open that same day. So you would probably, if you're going to use them, I would take them out of the fridge a day or two before the event that you want them for. Let's see, my peony plants have dark spots on the leaves and stems. It's most likely botrytis that they have. That's the most common, or we also call it peony measles. Again, it's a fungal disease. You can take those leaves off and send them in, as Tom has said, and they will, you can have them sent to the UW, to the disease lab, and they will identify it and tell you exactly what you need to use, what chemical you need to use to eradicate. Like up north, I had some of my corals, they were just dying off and I couldn't figure out, I sent it off and I had a very rare type of fungus disease and they told me exactly what to use to clear it up. but most likely it's botrytis. How can you split a peony plant? You split them in the fall. The really cool thing about peonies is they're referred to as the generational plant. And that's because when you split them, everywhere that you cut them, they regenerate new growth and actually become a juvenile plant all over again. So unlike a hosta where you can just, slam your shovel in the ground and take off a chunk, peony, what is recommended is that you dig the entire plant, take a hose, rinse it all off so you can see all of the root structure, all of the eyes, set it off in the shade for a couple days. You know how if you have an old carrot in the refrigerator, after it's been there for a long time, it becomes very pliable. The roots will become very pliable on the peony, just like that also. Otherwise, they're very brittle, and when you try to manipulate it, it breaks very easily. And then when you cut it apart, you want to have 3 to 5 eyes on each piece of the root, and then cut the long carrot structure roots down to about 6 to 8 inches. So
Well, one thing I've found that's very helpful in digging out peonies is a tool called a sawzall.
yes.
And
The
you
old-
put a 12-inch demolition blade in there and you cut a circle around the plant, and it
Yes.
makes it a lot easier to dig out. Michelle, it sounds like you've heard of that one.
Yeah. Well, the older the plants are, these roots can be absolutely massive and very difficult to get out. And so the means that Tom is talking about is, pretty right. The roots are going to grow all on top of each other, and they're going to be all mangled in. And when you have a very old, like if you're taking it from the homestead or maybe from your grandmother, you're going to have a lot of loss in that, simply because it's just completely entwined. But as long as that plant has one eye on it, it will grow a new plant. So I hope that helps. Oh, let's talk about the ants. Of course, how could we not talk about the ants? How to get rid of them before bringing the cuts into the house. Well, ants and the peony plants have a symbiotic relationship. So when you see the buds and they're first starting to open, there's a nectar that's on the bud. And the ants, I always joke and tell everybody, the ants haven't packed their bags, their suitcases, and come from the neighbors and come to your house, to your peony plants. Those ants that are on your peonies are living in your soil right there at your place. They come out of the soil and they're coming onto the plant to eat the nectar off of the bud. So the plant, your peony plant, is feeding the ants, and then as a gift back to you, the ants are eating aphid eggs and other different types of pests that might be on your plants and keeping your plants healthy. Once that nectar is gone off of the bloom, the ants just go back into the soil doing their own thing again. So if you pick your peony buds in bud stage, like I was talking about, or in that marshmallow stage where they're soft and squishy to your fingers, as soon as you cut that bud, if you just turn it upside down and shake it, the ants are going to fall right off. You're going to have a more beautiful bud in your vase because it hasn't been subjected to the ultraviolet rays of the sun, the weather, the wind, the rain, and it's going to be more fragrant and it's going to be more vibrant in color. So just cut them sooner in marshmallow stage. You don't have any ants in the house. The ants get to keep your plants healthy, and your plants will continue to feed the ants. Okay, what type of fertilizer do I recommend for the herbaceous peony and the timing? Peonies are not heavy feeders. I do not fertilize, even as a cut flower farmer, I do not fertilize on a yearly basis. And if I do fertilize, I cut the recommended, for the regular gardener, I would use a 10-10-10, a well-balanced. And I would cut the recommendation in half. I will do half of it in the spring as they're starting to come up, just about now, maybe a couple weeks. And then I would fertilize again in the after I have disbudded, deadheaded everything, so that that plant has energy to store the energy in the roots for next year's blooms. A caution on the fertilization. We talked about the main problem with peonies is fungus. If you are fertilizing your peonies a lot, you get rapid growth, which is very tender and it is very susceptible to disease. So you would want to cut back on how much you fertilize. You want to keep your lawn fertilizer away from your peonies because it is high nitrogen. If you're giving your peonies a lot of nitrogen, you are going to have beautiful, beautiful foliage and very few blooms. So no, what I used up north, if you can get a hold of it, is potato fertilizer. Think of your peonies as a root crop, like potatoes, carrots, those types of things, because that's what you're growing. You're growing a root structure. After the peony bloom, should you remove the dead flowers? Yes, and if so, how far down? I cut it down to the first bracket. Because I want as many leaves on that plant to photosynthesize and store energy in the root system. I don't want to leave any of the seeds on there because I want the energy in the roots and not for reproduction. You can let the seeds grow or mature and then grow them. You can buy seeds for peonies, but it takes about 5 years from seed to producing plant. 80% of the plants that are grown from seeds that are open pollinated are going to be single whites. So you might spend a very long time growing peonies from seeds and get just a single white and not a beautiful, nice. So let's see, I have a woody peony. It doesn't get many blooms. How do I get more? I only get about 6 and it's about 8 years old. I don't cut it down or cover it before winter. You don't want to cut it down because it's woody and your buds are on last year's growth and the buds over winter. And so if it's 8 years old and you're only getting 6 buds, I would think that you're losing it through damage, through desiccation in the winter. You get all the cold winds and that type of stuff, and it desiccates the buds. So if I was you, I would cage it and put burlap around it and fill it with some leaves and see if you get a change. The other thing is that naturally tree peonies grow at the edge of woodlands. They like dappled shade. So you might look at its condition where it's at. See, we already talked about powdery mildew. We talked about fertilization. How short do you cut them in the fall? I couldn't tell. Oh, so a regular herbaceous peony, I cut them down about 2 inches. From the ground. If you have an intersectional, again, those are a cross between a herbaceous and a tree peony, so they'll start having buds up onto the stems. So I cut, in fact, I went this morning and finished them off. I cut them down. I leave about 12 inches on the intersectional, and then like now you can see where there's viable buds on the stems, and then I cut down just above that in the spring because I don't want to cut down, I don't want to remove any good buds, off of an intersectional. I do love fragrant types. Do you know any good varieties with scent? Edula suprema. Edula suprema is supposed to be the most fragrant peony. There are many very beautiful fragrant peonies, and some of them aren't so pleasant. Some of them, I have one I talked about that one beautiful one, Don Richardson, the deep magenta with the gold trim on it. When I put that in the cooler and bring it out, it smells like dirty feet. So I never sell that one unless it's a fresh cut. As a fresh cut, it's okay. It doesn't have a nice, but many different, but Edulis Suprema is supposed to be the most fragrant peony. One fallback about the hybrids is that a lot of the hybrids do not have fragrance, so that when you're purchasing, and especially these growers that I talked about who I buy mine from, they will tell you whether it's fragrant or not. And do I mulch the peonies in the fall, and what kind? No, I do not. Peonies only need to be mulched the very first year. So if I plant new plants this fall, after I plant them, then I am going to mulch them with about 2 inches of mulch, and I just use wood chips. And then I just finished, in fact, on mulching mine that I planted this last fall. They don't have enough root structure yet to keep them in the ground, and the thaw freeze will heave them out. So only the first year, and then after that you want to keep the mulch away from around the crown, because when a mulch is decomposing, you get all the fungus action happening, and you're more able to give your plant some fungus. So keep the mulch away from the crown of the plant. What kind of fungicide do I use? I use Medallion and I use Chipco. Let's see, can you save side buds that are cut off? No, because the side buds haven't fully developed, and I'm removing them when they're pea size. They're just little tiny, they look like little tiny peas next to the leaf, and I just roll them off with my thumb. So they're not big enough, and if you wait till they're bigger, then it actually leaves a lesion on the side of the stem. What do I do with the end of the year clippings? End of the year clippings, we burn them. For you at your home, you would need to send them to the dump. Do not compost them. Our home compost does not get hot enough to kill fungus. So you don't want to bring the fungus into your compost pile. You get the rose Schaefer's, and how do you control this? Yeah. Treat them with the same stuff that you're treating your roses. And do I irrigate my peonies? I do. I have irrigation, drip line irrigation. Peonies are very drought tolerant. Once they're mature, you don't need to irrigate them, especially here in Wisconsin. We do get adequate rainfall. But for, like I said, they are setting bud for next year between July and September. And so especially my baby plants that are not mature yet, I do irrigate them so that they're getting good growth, and that they're also storing energy. Can you successfully grow peonies in Southern California? You live in a shaded canyon. I'm from California. I'm from San Diego originally. I was born in the Naval Hospital in Long Beach. The problem with peonies in Southern California is that peonies require so many chilling hours to set bud. And that's why the Midwest is perfect for peonies, is because we have plenty of cold for them to set bud. In Southern California, you are not going to get enough chill for them. I know that there are people that are in like zone 7 that go as far as putting ice bags on their the root systems in the fall, trying to get chilling hours for them to bloom. Yeah, so that would probably be if people try to grow them in pots. Also, you can grow a peony in pots as long as the pot is wide enough to facilitate the growth of the root system, but they don't normally do well in pots. let's see, I had a peony that was fine and producing flowers 2 years ago. It only grew about 6 inches tall. Same thing last summer. It's next to 2 other peonies that are fine. What's wrong? I couldn't tell you. It only got 6 inches. I'm assuming that it used to be much taller than that. It might be struggling competing with for nutrients. Is my first thought, is that it's starved. There's probably other perennials or tree roots or shrub roots. That's my best guess without seeing it and seeing the condition. It's just a pure guess.
Again, that might be a question that you would ask your local ag agent and send a picture, because the gardens change as they grow. So
Yes.
when you planted it, it's under one set of conditions. As it matures, the conditions may have changed because of what's around it. So, talk to your ag agent or your local master gardener.
And, if it's got 2 other peonies next to it, the peony root structures are huge, and it might just be crowded and it's just not getting nutrients. So, yeah. Or send me pictures this summer as it's growing, and maybe I can help you. Let's see, I have to dig out a large peony plant this spring. What is the best way to store it until fall for replanting? Yeah, it's not ideal to do it in spring, but if you have no choice, one thing about peonies is they do not like to be moved. So if you're going to dig it, make sure that you are dividing it. Again, when you dig it and divide it, it regenerates and becomes a juvenile plant again. If you dig it and move it, it disrupts all of its feeder roots, and it would not develop any new ones until the fall. So divide it, dig it and divide it, making sure you've got 3 to 5 eyes on each one. And then I would plant it in potted up in a large pot, ones that are wider in diameter, and then sink the whole pot in a semi-shaded area, and give it loving care all summer long, and then plant it in its new home in the fall. Next one, when do I cut my peonies back? Which month? I cut mine back in September. I don't wait for the leaves to get all crunchy, because I don't want them breaking and flying. When it's real windy, and at the end of September we have like that Santa Ana type weather. I don't want the leaves flying all over and me not doing a good cleanup. So I usually do it the first weekend in September. I cut them to the ground, and then I burn the leaves. Can you cut back peonies after blooming instead of waiting until fall? Sure, if you want to kill them, because you're not giving them any time by removing all of their buds and their leaves, they're not able to store any energy and get ready for next year's blooms. So I would not recommend that. Any recommendations on soil amendments? I lots of compost. I add bone meal and peat moss. Remember, it just needs to be well drained, and you're planting for 200 years. Can we talk about fern peonies? So hard to find them, and why? They're a hybrid, and everybody is fascinated with fern peonies, and because they bloom very early, because they're a hybrid. Some of these growers that I had recommended, that's where you're going to find them. So let's see, can you plant seeds to get peony plants to grow? Yes, you can. You can even buy seeds from the American Peony Society. Again, it takes about 5 years from seed to a viable plant. So what time of the day is best to water your peonies? It's best that you water them early in the day and that you're not watering the plant, the leaf structure. Use a drip irrigation or because you're trying not to make them prone to the fungus or the mildew. And if you're getting the leaves all wet, then that's when that's going to happen. So can I cut off the flower head about a month after the petals drop? Sure. You can do that, or you can cut them off as soon as the petals drop, and then that way they're not growing seeds. Do you cut woody type all the way to the ground too? No, the woody type, you do not want to cut it to the ground. Just at the end in the fall, what I find is that they don't like to drop their leaves. So you might just, when you're having frost and cold and stuff, go ahead and just strip the leaves off. And then cage it and put some burlap around the cage. You know, those little wire, little metal wire cages that you can get, they're edging that you can get at Menards. I use that as my cages. It's the perfect height, and you can cut them to go around the size of your peonies. And then I just wrap burlap around it and then fill it with leaves. And then that keeps the wind off of the wood and off of the buds, and it doesn't desiccate it. And then your woody plant does much better in the spring. Chicken coop wire works wonderful too. Yep.
Awesome. That looks like that's all our questions. Thank you so much, Michelle. It was very informative, and I think
Well, I
peonies
hope
are like
everybody
everyone's
enjoyed.
favorite.
Well, come and see us and come see all the blooms. Bring your photographs and your family members. There's always places set up for people to sit and take pictures and just sit and enjoy the blooms. And thank you for having me.
All right. Thank you. I'm going to close.
Thank you,
this out.
Michelle.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. And
Good night.
we'll be back in 2 weeks with perennials. Okay.
I'm trying to figure out how to get out of here.